friends. Welcome to the Hey BrownBerry podcast. I'm so glad you have come back to this little community corner of the internet. It's wonderful to have you here. Welcome in. I'm sitting outside. It is just past 9 a.m. in the morning. I'm in South Florida in the United States, and it's a beautiful morning to be outside. No clouds that I can see. The birds are fully awake, so that will make for our background chorus here today. And I had some things I wanted to share with you, so I thought I'd jump on the camera and do this recording so that I can connect. Most of you by now are aware that the world is in a bit of a reset. I'm borrowing that word from my friend Maria, who I just finished talking to, and that always lifts my mood, so it's a good time for me to come and share that perspective. Because of the SARS-CoV-2, commonly now being called the coronavirus, many of us are sheltering at home, staying at home, distancing ourselves from social events and friends and family members as a way to slow the spread of that virus in our country. So I am participating fully in whatever it takes to bring ourselves back to what we're used to. And I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for the internet and this method of connecting with you. I like to just jump right in, and I have a lot of things that I want to share with you. So let's do it. It is March 20th, 2020, and I have just now settled in after a few weeks back at home. I was recently in Norway. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you will have seen over at my Hey BrownBerry Instagram account that I shared pictures and videos and stories from my trip to Norway. I was so fortunate to be part of a group of makers who were invited over by Patricia. Patricia is P4Chen on Instagram, and I am now going to dub her the Retreat Planner Extraordinaire. Patricia, if you're watching this, I have to start by saying a huge thank you. Patricia planned the knitography retreat for 15 of us from all different parts of the world, the United States, Switzerland, the UK, and just brought together this beautiful group of makers so that we could experience a retreat that she has planned to put on at different times during the year. We were the dress rehearsal. Lucky? Yes. Grateful? Definitely. She managed to put together about 5 days worth of wonderful activities, some field trips, making time, gorgeous food. This is every Thursday for me. Yes, every Thursday for me.
Like Carson is about to come in here. Where's Mr. Big?
It's just so cool.
I'm
I'm so ready. I'm ready, guys.
We're
doing it. It's really cool to watch.
Oh my goodness.
Where the hell are we?
One must wonder.
Oh, it smells so good.
In Norwegian, so I don't know if you caught it.
And opportunities for us to get to know the place that she loves. A lot of it was place-based, and we experienced so many locally sourced, delicious things to eat, so many wonderfully squishy and soulful stash kinds of yarns and fibers, and the people of Norway that we were able to encounter. That was the icing on a very tasty cake. So I'm going to share with you pieces and parts of that trip, and I've decided finally, after many takes, that my best bet is to just insert some notes from Norway into some episodes coming up, including this one. I think that my mind is telling me I have to give you every single detail because it was all so good, but realistically, it's a lot of content, and I don't want to overwhelm you or myself, so I will just insert little bits that I think you will enjoy as much as I did and tell you about them as we go. As you would have seen in my intro video, I've got my standard podcast pile and there are things that I've been doing that I'd love to share with you. Let's start with some knitting. Currently, as I'm at home, I have been working on a test knit, and it's related to my trip to Norway because I was fortunate to meet the designer of the all-terrain sweater, who is Jimmy of Jimiknits. Jimmy was wearing this gorgeous sweater, and I thought at the time that it was already a published pattern, that it was something that she had put out into the world, but it turns out she was still looking for test knitters. And to have spent a week with her and seen her aesthetic and just really gotten to like her as a person, I jumped at the opportunity to test knit this sweater. And I didn't even know at the time if I had the right yarn in my stash, but I was so in love with the texture, and that's what I'm going to share with you. So Jimmy has managed to create something very unique. It's a sweater that has different textures on the body of the sweater and on the sleeves. So what I finished so far in this bottom-up pieced sweater is the back. So I'll show you that first. This back of the sweater was, as I said, knit from the bottom up, so I started with the ribbing. And then I moved into this beautifully textured, very pleasing stitch pattern that Jimmy has used for both the front and the back of the sweater. And I'm knitting the medium size because it is meant to have a good amount of positive ease, and I wanted a little bit less ease in my version. So once the sweater comes out, of course, all the notes for it will be on my Ravelry page. I've done so far the back and one sleeve. I want to show you this sleeve piece because it also has a stunning texture. Started with the ribbing at the bottom and then moved into this textured pattern. I just think this idea of having different stitch types across different parts of a sweater is genius. For one thing, it is visually interesting for sure, but for another, it makes for a satisfying knit because things are changing and that stimulates the brain. I love it. Jimmy, I love it. So that's the first sleeve. I'm now working on the front of the sweater, which is very much like the back except for some shoulder shaping details, and what I have so far is the ribbing for that. And then I'll work the next sleeve. I decided to alternate between the body pieces and the sleeve pieces, again for mental stimulation and just having a different number of stitches on the needles for each part of the project. For whatever reason, that keeps me interested. I have a good amount of time left on the test knit, but I am hoping to finish it quite early so that I can use all of this beautiful light to take some pictures. The yarn is, there's a story here. The yarn is an Aran weight yarn that I got from Ireland. My friend Grace was having a de-stash last summer and she had some undyed yarn. It is Tivoli Aran brand, and I'm a sucker for undyed yarn because all of my natural dye tendencies have me looking at undyed yarn as a palette for me to paint with color, and that's what I did here. Unfortunately, I didn't make great notes. Again, a story. I'm positive that I used some logwood chips to dye this, so within the yarn there are some purple kind of flashes. If you look closely, you can see amongst this olivey green, subtle yellow, there are some purplish blue flashes from the logwood. I believe that the rest of it may have been some lichen dye and maybe even some onion skins, but I didn't make good notes. Lesson learned. Part of not making good notes also meant that the test knit was meant to be done in a DK and a worsted weight yarn, which I had convinced myself this was. It's not. It's an Aran weight. That means less yardage per skein and a very different gauge, which is what clued me into the fact that it wasn't a worsted. I was measuring my gauge and realized that the gauge was a bit chunkier than called for. But thankfully, Jimmy's pattern completely allows for that because she gives you a lot of guidance around measurements. And you can use any gauge and knit to the measurements that you need as long as you love the fabric, and I do. Another benefit of being on this trip is just experiencing things with other makers. All the while, we were being hosted and treated to these wonderful trips and sights and views. And I'm going to show you some of that now. And it really made it more special that the people who traveled with this group were so easy to be around. Take a look.
Okay, so we should take right up there. Up there, see beside the
Get all the
fence.
knitters and the knitwear.
Okay, well, will we go back there?
Oh, okay.
Photo shoot.
Yes.
Photo shoot in progress.
Does that make sense?
I will do some
My
filming.
phone not being seen, right?
Oh, hang on, I want one.
Just wait.
I'm filming.
Yay!
Hang on, don't. I know you're cold.
But tough nuts.
And she does this amazing work in dentistry in South America somewhere. I'm not sure.
Just learning about Russian folk singing, and so our teacher played the guitar.
We're going to be on the internationally renowned #1 podcast, Hey BrownBerry podcast. Beloved YouTube sensation. It's directly translated, yeah. Directly translated.
And so we could sing along, and they were like,
Hey, Sarah.
Charlotte. To refer to you like a southerner. Charlotte. Miss Charlotte. Every space in here has perfect lighting.
it'll be fairly light.
Trisha's got a glowing halo, as appropriate, as she should. Gentlemen, the representation from the Knitography Retreat this year. We expect a good showing from this crew.
And I'm representing United Kingdom.
Yes, excellent, excellent. Very well done, very well done. We'll see you all back here. Stay on your feet. This small shelter is called Bårdshaug, and it's where we will be sitting together and knitting today, this beautiful Saturday. And soon we will grill our lunch over the fire. Just to say hi, starting with Patricia and then Lori, before you take your sip. Oh, sweetness. Oh my goodness. I hang out with some stunning women. I'm jealous.
That way? Yeah.
Aren't they beautiful? The group was a great mix of designers, podcasters, teachers, knitters of the highest skill level from my perspective. Maria was with me. We traveled together, which always makes every trip better, just experiencing things along with her. And we had Patricia, who is a shepherdess and farmer. We had folks who have had multiple experiences and ways at which they come at this knitting world. I felt really, really fortunate to have conversations with them and to be inspired by them. One of the things I was inspired to cast on was from another designer who traveled with us, Charlotte. Hey Charlotte, if you're watching. Charlotte is Stone Knits, and her designs, in particular her colorwork sock designs, are very compelling. And I say that as someone who doesn't feel like I've had much luck with colorwork socks in the past. I tend to overthink it, and I tend to let that stress into my stitches. And so I've been working on improving my gauge and just relaxing into the beautiful color options that are available. Charlotte was very kind to encourage us in knitting some of her patterns, and I chose one. This is the Whoopsie-Daisy sock pattern, and it is top down. Let me hold it properly. It is a top down pattern. It features these adorable daisies, and Charlotte's sample in the pattern really inspired me to go with a high contrast, and so I purchased, while we were there, some yarn to make these socks. So this is Ralma Finul. It's a pretty popular, well-known Norwegian wool, and I see why everybody loves it for color work, because the color range is extensive and it is the right kind of grabby yarn for colorwork stitches. Charlotte is clearly skilled at the way she puts together her patterns. It's given me courage. I actually did start out this sock pattern and did a bit of undoing. This is just one of the socks that I've pulled off the needles up here, because I don't know if you can see, but the gauge here, it's much tighter. Stress knitting for no good reason. And I want to do these right, so I pulled out the cuff, and I'm going to pull out this first set of daisies. Found that needle size needed to change, so I accommodated that here. I'm going to pull this out and redo the ribbing at this section because I want them to be done properly. I really love the fabric that I'm getting now, and I think the pattern is stunning. That has given me, it's just given me a beautiful way to remember the trip. It's just another perfect kind of souvenir. I hope you don't mind, Charlotte, but I'm using a heel that's a bit different than the one that's called for in the pattern, because I wanted to challenge myself to see if I could insert a heel flap and gusset into this color work sock and manage all of the patterning and things on it. So I'm just giving that a try. If it doesn't work out, I can always start over. Getting yarn in Norway to knit a pattern by a designer that I was traveling with there was an extra special treat, for sure. And I want to share with you just a few more sights and scenes, because I think yarn and fiber was such a huge part of this journey. And it's one thing to purchase online or purchase yarn at a festival that you know has been carefully and lovingly milled and put together by people who love wool as much as you do. But it's another thing to meet the person who feeds the sheep and tends the sheep and houses them and takes care of them, and then has their yarn or their fiber processed so that you can make with it. And we had that opportunity by visiting Gunn Elin's farm, and the whole experience of being at that farm was something I've never really enjoyed before this point. We met the shepherd, she fed us, we sat in her home, we met her sheep, and I'm hoping you'll enjoy some of these notes from Norway.
But she will have the wool in colors.
Yeah.
So here, for 1 week ago, it was wool all over the place, and I stood. So I hope I can deliver it soon. But I also have wool that is dirty or it's much of dead hair.
Yeah.
And that I do insoles.
Okay.
And I use this to make fleece. And I need 5 to make 2 pair of insoles. Takes me half an hour to sew.
Wow.
And I make a pair when I do it.
Yeah.
So, but the wool is under the body. I take it out. Before I.
When is lambing for you? When is lambing season?
14 April.
Oh, very nice.
Soon.
Yeah.
And we get 150 lamb this year.
Wow.
And that's very much to this little house.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yes, it is.
Very good. It's beautiful
good
here.
food.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Told you that Gunn Elin is kind of a one-woman show here, and she's also working to protect heritage breeds in our group. And she's going to tell you, and she's done a drawing for visuals. She understands the visual people like me, and she's made what's called an orjoul, which is the year of the whole year process of the farm. It doesn't translate so well. So I'm gonna help her if she needs it, but tell wherever you want to start in the year, Gunn Elin.
I want to start in January, February, March. We pick the year in 4. In January, February, March, it's a quiet month. normally.
That's why we can come here, actually.
Yes.
Someone, I just say that because some people said, oh, she must be so busy and everything.
No.
But this is an okay time of year to visit.
Yes. In January, February, I don't do so much with the sheep because we don't cut the wool because it's cold outside. But I use these months to make new products and sort the wool in my office. And then I, in March, April, I cut the sheep.
So then this on the back tells like a story. These things. We have 5 symbols, and it's water with this one, sun, the heart, and the earth. Yes, the earth.
Friends, that's the first part of what I wanted to share with you so far. I have lots more coming, so be sure and tune into the next part of this series of episodes that include my Norway Notes. Thank you for being here, and I will see you very soon. Mwah. Bye for now.